Hello everyone, it's Wednesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Yo-jong. This morning, North Korea fired a long-range ballistic missile into the East Sea. This after Pyongyang repeatedly slammed the U.S. over an alleged intrusion of a spy aircraft into its exclusive economic zone, or EEZ. A notable part of the warning previously issued by the North Korean leader's sister, Kim Yo-jong, is that Kim referred to South Korea as the Republic of Korea instead of the usual Namjoseon, which means South Korea. Now, experts say this signals a change in its strategy when dealing with the South. What are the North's hidden intentions? For this, we invite into the studio Doctor Go Myong-hyun, Senior Fellow at Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Go, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Evans Revere, Senior Advisor at Albright Stonebridge Group. Our Mr. Revere is also a former Acting Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Mr. Revere, welcome to the show.
Great to have me.
All right, now first question to our Dr. Go. Now, before North Korea launched what it seems to be an ICBM, it has repeatedly accused the U.S. of using spy aircraft to intrude its, airspace. What are the details of the incident?
So it's really a mind-boggling incident in the sense that it's not really not an incident at all. It's just that North Korea has made this preposterous claim that the U.S. aircraft has intruded upon its airspace. But then what's the contention here is the definition of the airspace. So traditionally, it's assumed that the airspace corresponds to the area on the sea that's directly corresponding to the territorial sea of a country. That's only like 12 miles. But then 12 kilometers. But then the position in which the U.S. spy aircraft was flying was in fact 400 kilometers away from the nearest North Korean territory. So then even if you make this provision that the North Koreans are applying a very expensive definition of airspace, which is in this case will be applying the definition of the exclusive economic zone, which is actually 200 knots from the nearest land point in North Korea, that still translates to 370 kilometers. The spy aircraft was actually flying 420 kilometers away from North Korean territory. So I think a lot of observers in North Korea found this very mind-boggling because there was not really a ground for North Koreans to be complaining about this. So again, this probably indicates that North Koreans are making really a big thing out of nothing in order to send a message to South Korea and the United States. And then the speculation is that North Koreans are doing this because they had a series of failures with their intended plans to successfully launch a spy satellite, and the economic crisis is actually raging on in the country. So I think the North Korean regime is trying to increase tension, and they're also calling to attention that they exist after all.
Right, I see. Now, before we move on to the hidden intentions of North Korea, Mr. Revere, while delivering a warning to the U.S., Kim Yo-jong used the term Republic of Korea, which is the first time the North has referred to the South by its official name. What does this hint at?
Well, it would be a wonderful day if we could interpret what Kim Yo-jong said as her way of showing respect for the Republic of Korea and its democracy and its sovereignty. But Kim Yo-jong being Kim Yo-jong, that's not what she was doing. There are some who are convinced that this is some sort of a peace feeler or a way of reaching out to the South. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's, in an interesting way, what the North Koreans are doing is describing South Korea as something other than a partner on the peninsula, part of the greater Korean nation. They are trying to characterize South Korea as something other and different. And I think the logic, the North Korean logic behind that is by identifying South Korea as an entity that is the other here. They are making it a lot easier to make the case in North Korea for the use of their WMD against the South. They're also signaling that the days of North-South cooperation and dialogue, where both sides talked about tension reduction, both sides talked about reconciliation as both parts of the Korean nation, those days are over. And so the South Koreans are trying to place the North Koreans are trying to place South Korea in a very different box as something other than their peninsula partner.
Oh, I see. So North Korea is characterizing South Korea indeed in a very different way. Now, Mr. Revere, one more question. Experts say there is a reason for North Korea's criticism, perhaps using the situation as a justification for provocation, such as what we saw this morning. What's your view on this?
When North Korea is in a difficult situation, and it is in a difficult situation right now, it often responds by these demonstrations of macho rhetoric, strength, military exercises, missile launches, threats, etc. That is fairly common practice for the North Koreans. Take a look at the overall situation on the peninsula and in the region and the world from North Korea's perspective right now. And you'll see that North Korea is not operating from a position of dominance or strength. The failed satellite launch, a very embarrassing failure, especially since South Korea recovered the satellite and part of the booster and made clear that the satellite, even if it had been put into orbit, would have had no military value whatsoever. That was embarrassing to the North Koreans. We've seen an uptick in the number of U.S. ROK military exercises. We see a tremendous uptick in the stature and status of the Republic of Korea on the international stage. We've got the president of the ROK at the NATO summit right now in Lithuania. We've got the ROK foreign minister on his way to Indonesia for the ASEAN Regional Forum. We have increasing cooperation between Japan and the Republic of Korea. We have the first meeting of the Nuclear Consultative Group coming up, which will be an unprecedented step forward in U.S. ROK cooperation in terms of nuclear strategy. I could go on. There's a lot going on right now. We also have the impending visit of the American ballistic missile submarine. None of those things are operating in North Korea's favor right now. So North Korea is operating from a position of increasing isolation and weakness. All the more reason for North Korea to make some noise, to make some threats, to launch a missile here and there, and to make the sort of idle threat and groundless threat against American reconnaissance aircraft that we've heard recently. So this is in keeping with North Korean practice, particularly when it's not operating from a position of strength.
I see. Now, Dr. Go, let's move on to the summit between NATO and South Korea. Before the summit, President Yoon had a written interview with the Associated Press, and he said that the peace is never as certain and reliable as when it is backed by a powerful force and deterrence. Now, this clearly shows the direction Yoon administration is pursuing, right?
Yeah, so exactly. I think it really goes back to the ancient classical Latin adage that said, "Si vis pacem parabellum." So if you want peace, you have to prepare for war. And that's the basic underlying assumption of deterrence. I think the stronger the credibility of your retaliatory power is, then the other side is naturally more inclined to settle for peace. So this, I mean, with North Korea, I think North Korea studied this though. I mean, North Korea is the one that brought this language of power and then deterrence into the peninsula. When they start developing their illicit nuclear and missile program, they justify this by saying that this is in order to deter South Korea and the United States. Then, if they brought that logic, and then it's time to turn the table and apply the logic to them. And I think President Yoon is taking the right approach. And then this is a very asymmetric kind of a competition between the two Koreas. I mean, North Korea, as Mr. Revere said very succinctly and correctly, it's isolated, it's weak, and doesn't really have many allies. Where the closest ally is probably Russia right now. I mean, China tries to, keep its distance from North Korea because North Korea, just like Russia today, is very toxic. So these are the only two countries that North Korea can count on. But on the other hand, South Korea counts with tons of powerful countries, allies, partners, and the level of our relationship, the partnership and alliance is very deep. So, and this partnership and alliance takes place in many different domains, not just the military domain, but also in the economic domain. So this is essentially the essence of the deterrence that Korea has against North Korea. And it's natural for North Korea to feel, a position of weakness right now.
I see. Now, Mr. Revere, staying on the NATO front, NATO is strengthening cooperation with countries in the Asia-Pacific region, and of course, South Korea is included in that. In fact, the new NATO-South Korean document took effect at the summit to institutionalize cooperation in 11 areas. Now, first of all, why is NATO focusing on this in the Pacific region, and what is this deal about?
The increase in attention by NATO to East Asia, the Indo-Pacific, if you will, has a number of origins, but not the least of which is the fact that not only is the United States a major trading partner with countries located in the Indo-Pacific region, so is Europe. So are all the NATO member states. Beyond that, though, it's become increasingly obvious to everybody that the security situation in East Asia, Northeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific region, and that in Europe are interconnected in so many ways. The threats that we're seeing right now, the cooperation that we're seeing between Russia and China, which have become de facto allies, if you will, on the basis of this partnership without limits, as the Chinese and Russians called it. This is a matter of concern to NATO countries as they see Russia cooperating with China, Russia cooperating with North Korea, as they see the possible impact of a conflict in East Asia, the possibility that that would have a major impact on trade relations, open sea lines of communication, et cetera, trade relations with the region. All of those things have reminded the NATO members that security is interconnected. The security of the West and that of the East are intimately connected. And so what we're seeing right now is the unfolding of this new perspective that exists among NATO countries, that not only do they need to ensure that their immediate neighborhood is safe and stable and secure, but other neighborhoods that could affect their livelihoods and their security going forward. Those are also areas that Europe, NATO countries need to take a greater interest in. And I think that's a good thing, and it's been a long time coming.
I see. I mean, what our Mr. Revere says, it kind of resonates of what the NATO Secretary General talked about. He talked about how what happens in the Pacific region actually has a definite spillover effect on their region as well. Now, Mr. Revere, one more question. Given that 31 member states adopted a joint statement on North Korea's complete, verifiable, reversible denuclearization, how would North Korea see strengthening ties between NATO and South Korea?
Well, add that to the list that I provided you a moment ago of the reasons why Pyongyang is having an anxiety attack right now. 31 NATO partners came together, and one of the most important orders of business was for them to remind North Korea and remind the international community of the importance of the denuclearization of North Korea and the end of the North Korean nuclear weapons program. That's a powerful message when you think about it. It's the world's most powerful alliance is coming down on the side of the Republic of Korea and the United States and Japan and the position that we've taken on the North Korean nuclear weapons program. So it sends a very powerful message, and it's another reason for the anxiety that Pyongyang is feeling right now. They are feeling isolated. They are feeling abused, if you will, by the international community. They are feeling troubled by all of this because they see the international community coming together with an unprecedented level of unity on something as fundamental as this, and that does not sit well in Pyongyang.
Right, I see your point. Now, Dr. Go, starting tomorrow, ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting is going to take place, and eyes are on whether North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Son-hui is going to be at the site, but I heard the chances are quite low, but what's your view?
Well, clearly, the Foreign Minister Choi hasn't really left North Korea yet, so chances that she won't be able to make it to the ASEAN Regional Forum on time. But I think there's also indication that the North Koreans are probably not ready for talks right now. North Koreans clearly use engagement or dialogue as an instrument, as a foreign policy instrument, which is obviously the very basic basis of the diplomacy. But then the way they shift from this kind of the current period of provocation to engagement is very typical playbook of North Korea's strategy. And then, like myself and then many other experts have been expecting North Korea to shift from this phase of provocation to the phase of dialogue. So that's why there's been so much attention paid to the whereabouts or the movement of Chesoni, Foreign Minister Chesoni, and coinciding with the major diplomatic events such as the ASEAN Regional Forum. But then we also know that North Koreans don't tend to use this multilateral forum as a stage to launch their engagement initiatives. Oftentimes they prefer bilateral engagements, preferably with the United States, but sometimes with South Korea. But then they see that those avenues are essentially blocked right now. The Biden administration is not interested in engaging North Korea, neither is South Korea right now, and that's a dilemma for North Koreans. A lot of experts are speculating that the North Koreans are probably exploring off-ramp or an exit strategy from the current the dead-end strategy of provocations, endless provocations. So, but then there's no easy off-ramp. I mean, that's the reason why I think there's been some talks about the Japanese and North Korean engagements efforts. But then I think what North Koreans are trying to do is keep looking for an off-ramp. Perhaps the Paris Summer Olympics next year could be such an opportunity for them. But just like what happened back in 2018 with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. But I think the dilemma is still there, and I think they're still going to explore their chances. But then I don't think the multilateral events such as the ASEAN Regional Forum will be such an occasion.
Oh, right. Yeah. We'll have to see what kind of strategy North Korea comes up with. Now, Mr. Revere, moving on to upcoming meetings, the very first meeting of the Nuclear Consultative Group is going to take place next week. And for those who might not be familiar with what this is, how was it first formed? And I remember you saying that this is an unprecedented move. Why is it so significant?
The origins of this, of course, this new consultative group were a decision made by the United States and the ROK that something more needed to be done to demonstrate to the South Korean people, but also demonstrate to the North Korean regime that the United States was standing by its extended deterrent commitment to the Republic of Korea. There was a lot of nervousness in Seoul over the last year or so as a number of people were watching nuclear weapons and ballistic missile developments in North Korea. And there were some doubts that were creeping into the media about whether the United States would indeed stand by its commitment to South Korea. There was previously an extended deterrent dialogue that had functioned sort of on and off basis. But it was clearly insufficient to provide the necessary assurance to South Korea. And so at the Washington summit, President Yoon and President Biden announced the Washington Declaration, and a central component of that is this unprecedented level of U.S. ROK dialogue on nuclear weapons, nuclear strategy in the context of the bilateral U.S.-ROK alliance. It's a really, really important and major step forward. It underscores the commitment of the United States to defend the Republic of Korea with all the weapons in its arsenal. And now South Korea becomes a part of the dialogue and consultative process to explore how that assurance is going to play out in the future. Including, if heaven forbid, there should ever be a conflict. So this is a major move, a big deal, as Joe Biden would occasionally say, and it is a big deal because it gives the Republic of Korea an important seat at the table as these decisions, as this strategy is hammered out about how to use these incredible weapons to, number one, deter North Korea, and number two, defend the Republic of Korea.
Right, I see. Now, up until now, Mr. Revere, we have been talking about NCG, but I'd like to also tap on the Trilateral summit between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington that is expected to take place in late August. Now, if this goes ahead, experts say it is going to be very significant in that it will mark the first such gathering arranged solely for their shared agenda. What's your view and what could be discussed?
Well, this comes on the heels of so many trilateral meetings that we've seen on the margins of other international gatherings, such as the one going on in Lithuania right now, between and among the U.S., the ROK, and Japan. So there have been numerous opportunities for the two to meet on the margins. But now I think this is shifting this cooperation into a higher gear as the leaders will specifically meet in the coming weeks together, separate and apart from other international fora, to discuss their common strategy, their common concerns, to deal with some of the unfolding realities that we're dealing with. Number one being, of course, the threats that we're hearing from North Korea right now, the latest ballistic missile test, the ongoing development of ballistic missile capabilities by North Korea. All of those issues and more, I think, are going to be on the agenda. And I think it's, once again, kicking this important trilateral cooperative process into a much higher gear. And I think it's a very, very important and positive development.
All right, I see. Now, I'd like to ask many more questions to our experts, but unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Now, thank you, Mr. Revere, for your insights. And of course, thank you, Dr. Go, for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.